Are you looking for an inspiring listen? Something to motivate you? You've come to the right place. Welcome to Women of the Northwest, where we have conversations with ordinary women leading extraordinary lives. Motivating, inspiring, compelling. Christa Svensson grew up in a commercial fishing family. She is a Sustainability Program Manager Global at Tri-Marine. She works for a company that handles just over 10% of the global tuna supply and is responsible principally for a lot of the reporting related to the International Sustainable Seafood Foundation, as well as the work that involves social accountability and social responsibility, particularly with fishing vessels. Let's welcome her. Okay, my guest today is Christa Svensson. Hi, Christa.
Hi.
So you work with Tri-Marine. Tell me about that. What's your role there?
I'm the Sustainability Program Manager Global at Tri-Marine. And what that means is I work for a company that handles just over 10% of the global tuna supply. And I am responsible for a lot of the reporting related to the International Sustainable Seafood Foundation, as well as the work that involves social accountability and social responsibility, particularly with fishing vessels.
What's your background that qualified you to do this?
I started out in a fishing family. So I have parents, both of which fished commercially. I started going, well, for as long as I can remember. There's pictures of me in my mom's arms as a brand new baby on the boat. And I always wanted to fish. I started going professionally when I was 17. I had certainly been going for many years before that, but was not paid. It was more playing on the boat. And I paid for undergraduate and most of grad school commercial fishing in Alaska.
Okay.
And then decided I wanted to be home a little bit more and took a job on land working in seafood processing in sales and marketing, which led to working in sustainability. And that is a bit of a circuitous route of how I got to where I am.
Yeah.
But both sides on the processing and on the vessel side really are what allow me to do the work that I'm doing today.
And with that kind of experience and the feet on the ground, you understand way more than maybe somebody else does. What you're doing.
Yeah, it's a different perspective, I think, than what a lot of people who are working in the space I'm working in bring. It's not necessarily a better perspective, but it's certainly a different one.
Yeah.
Simply because I do have the on-the-water experience. I do have the in-the-plant experience. I do tend to think about food safety and the impacts to people on board perhaps a little differently. But that also means I don't necessarily have the experience outside of the seafood industry that other people can bring in.
So then you collaborate.
Yeah, there's a lot of collaboration.
So do you work, is that something you do a lot online, or you end up, what's your day look like?
It's highly variable. I would say most of the time I do work online. I work remotely. Tri-Marine, we work with about 600 different fishing vessels in any given year. And the majority of those are not based in the United States.
So you travel a lot.
I travel. And I work online with people through Teams or Zoom or Google Meets to put together plans for how we're going to work on getting connectivity on board fishing vessels, or how we're going to launch grievance mechanisms, or really basically anything that is working to prevent forced labor or slave labor in seafood supply chains.
So that's really the bottom line of what you're doing, is the forced labor?
Yeah.
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 Okay. So what's that look like? What is that? How do you even know about that it's happening? And
well, there's different ways you can know about it's happening. There certainly have been documentaries that have released information. We had Ocean Outlaw came out with a couple of articles in October. We've had other programs through the years. How do we ourselves, when we're looking at our supply chain, know what's going on. We use a variety of tools. We use risk assessments in terms of where our fleets are operating, how they're operating, are they transshipping at sea? We use social audits where we, in many cases, go in and interview the crew and find out kind of what's going on in their lives using trained social auditors. So this is not something that I am qualified to do by any means. But I certainly can say, hey, this is important and let's find out and work on what we need to work on. We have the ability through trade organizations we belong to get additional input from crew members and to work with others who are also working on this, both in the NGO space, civil society space, and other organizations such as ourselves that are in industry in a variety of positions. So it could be retailers, it could be other tuna buying brands, it could be vessels themselves, to really identify, even if it isn't in our own supply chain, what that looks like in terms of highest risk areas.
So when your interviewer goes in, it's like, hi, I'm here to find out whether you're doing any. I mean, how do they go about doing it? How do they? Who are they deciding they're asking? And because you think some of that would be hidden knowledge.
So there's a variety of things that they're looking at. They're looking at health and safety. Do they have things like life rafts? They're looking at crew contracts and making certain that crew contracts are in languages that can be understood by the crew that are signing them.
Maybe, yeah.
And if they can't be, then the expectation is that they have somebody there that can translate, say somebody is illiterate, that they have the contract clearly explained to them so that they understand what they are signing. We have auditors look at grievance mechanisms, and then auditors, in addition to all of that, are provided with a crew list and provide, typically through random selection, they'll pick however many crew that they would like to interview and spend some time with them.
Yeah.
And the questions aren't, is there anything going on the boat? I mean, this is, again, why they're a trained auditor, to really kind of suss out what's going on and find out. And then from there, the steps really vary in terms of what's needed. It may be that they need to be paid back for something that they paid for. It may be that they want automatic withdrawals for their paychecks and they're being paid in cash. It may be that they need to understand, and this is the auditor, the auditor may need some training. And to give a specific example of that, one of the first audits I did, and it's one of the few critical issues I've ever seen. I've actually only had 2 come up in audits, and both of them were auditor training.
Yeah.
But the first time it was that the vessel did not have a life raft on board. And I completely freaked out. This was a boat that was going to be gone for 10 months.
Right.
Even if they were gone for 2 weeks, I wouldn't want them out there without a life raft.
Yeah.
And then I realized that the boat came back once a year to their home port. And I thought, I wonder if that life raft was in the shop getting repacked. And so I asked my own team, I said, hey, in the U.S., I don't know what happens where you are, but over here we repack our life rafts annually. Is that a legal requirement in your country? And they said yes. And I said, okay, is there any chance at all that this life raft is in the shop? And they said, well, of course it's in the shop. It's getting repacked. And I said, okay, this is not a critical nonconformity. The critical would be if it wasn't being repacked. And the auditors said, oh, we didn't know that life rafts got repacked. So, now an auditor, that specific auditor would be asking, hey, is your life raft in the shop? It's those kind of details where sometimes things look different than what the reality is.
Yeah.
And that is not to say that there isn't a lot of work to be done. I think that there is, or I wouldn't have a job, but it is something that people are actively working on. And that's people like me that are actively working on. It's people that are in government in terms of legislation. And even at the international fisheries management level, we're talking about crew safety and really what that means in terms of preventing abuses at sea.
And so part of that is the overarching is employment security and livability and, doing the right thing for your employees.
Correct.
Is there an essence of the job of maybe fish not being reported, what they've caught being reported accurately, or is that something that happens too?
I mean, there's IUU fishing going on out there, I'm sure somewhere. And it is something that we actively work on through ISSF, which I mentioned earlier. So we do a variety of things ourselves, such as we report all of the fish that we purchase to the RFMOs so that they have a better handle on what is coming out of their areas.
Yeah.
We look at transshipment at sea. That would be higher risk in terms of what's going on. And that's not something that we typically purchase. But, if we do, then we're looking at observer statements to make sure that they have observers on board their vessels, which gives really a bit more oversight than just people out there cavalierly doing whatever it is that's going on or may not be going on. And I think that's one of the key pieces to remember. We get very focused on IUU. We get very focused on
Can
labor.
you tell us what that stands for?
Illegal, unreported.
Okay.
Yeah. But there's an awful lot of people that are out there that love doing what they do, that are helping support food security in a safe way, in an environmentally sound way, who are being swept up in this because we have reports that are negative. And it is really, really difficult to prove zero.
Yeah.
And so, that would be kind of like, and I had somebody give this analogy, people in the U.S. love football. I mean, they really love football.
Yeah.
That would be like saying you can't have any accident ever on the football field.
Right.
Or we're going to shut you down.
Yeah.
Now, I don't see that happening anytime soon. But we can make it as safe as we possibly can for football players with padding and headgear. And if people look like they might have a concussion, making sure they stay off the field and get proper medical evaluation. And so really, when we're thinking about it for seafood, thinking about how we can keep people safe, how we can keep the environment safe is critical. But we need to understand that sometimes people are having their worst day. And that may get caught in an audit. And, we do need to remediate for that. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
But we also need to understand people are human and that the environment is not one that is maybe the most forgiving.
Yeah.
And I think we also need to remember that we are talking about a source of employment for millions of people.
Right.
We are talking about a food source for billions of people. And food security is critical. So helping people to do that in a way that allows us to maintain access to that food source.
Right.
Because if we make things so difficult, we won't have anybody that goes fishing, and now we will have people literally starving. So there's a balance. Yeah, there is a balance there, and I think it's important that we find solutions that are practical for people on the water, as well as give people on land the confidence to really understand what they're purchasing.
And so if you are...
Sometimes it is thinking about how to do things differently. A lot of times vessels have, as an example, a grievance mechanism. They can talk to the captain, they can call to the boat owner if they get on shore. I'm not saying that this is a perfect grievance mechanism. They may have a suggestion box that can leave anonymous, or you can put a letter in the captain's stateroom. I'm not saying this is perfect, but I am saying that that there is kind of a process.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go into a social audit, if you're looking at something like the Seafood Task Force that wants a grievance policy, the first time most vessels don't score super well in that section because they don't have anything formally documented.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking the time to develop a policy and procedure, which we did through the task force, and just say, hey, you know what, this will meet the requirement. If you put your company name and agree to do this, you will have a policy. That's free.
Is that some things that they don't even think about, though? Is it, or there's bigger fish to fry, bigger things to be more important,
Are you talking about is grievance?
No, yeah, just like say the captain of the ship has got so many things on his mind. That's not something that has been a priority to institute or something, a box to check
I think the policy side of things perhaps maybe not as important to them.
Yeah.
Dealing with personnel on board vessels in general is something that is very important to them. Morale really can make or break your crew.
Oh, for sure.
And so having a vehicle for people to air those grievances is important.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something, again, through the work we've done at the task force, that's been pretty consistently identified as something that people see as critical in terms of really advancing this work.
Yeah.
So the big three that can change over time, we've got 15 different points that we're really looking at, but the three that have been in primary focus recently have been health and safety, grievance, and then things related to responsible recruitment, which would include crew agencies and crew contracts. And
that makes sense.
And there are others. There's things like child labor. But when you're looking at distant water long line vessels, as an example, they're not taking people under 18, which is what we require, simply because they're physically really demanding jobs. And typically they're looking at their Mariner's Sea Book, or they're looking at their passport and validating, hey, we don't have children on the boat. So child labor, at least in our company's supply chain, really is not, it's something we look at, and we have a policy in place of, hey, here's what we will do if somebody turns up.
Right.
But it is not something that we see.
Yeah.
Whereas we do see people, again, typically they have grievance mechanisms on board, but they did not typically have policies and procedures. So that really has been an area of focus for the last 2 years for me.
What countries do you deal with? Is it more like what countries don't you deal with?
It's a lot. I mean, we work with people in the United States. We work with people. Why don't I just start with like where we have offices?
Sure.
So Trimarine is owned by Bolton Foods, which is based out of Italy. So technically we are an Italian company. Our office here in the U.S. is based up in Bellevue. We have offices in Spain. We have a fleet of vessels that is half Spanish, half Ecuadorian. We have an office currently in France and vessels based out of France. We're in the Solomon Islands. We have a plant in the Solomon Islands, and we have a number of purse-seine vessels also based out of the Solomons. We have an office in Taiwan. We have an office in China. We have an office in Singapore, one in Thailand. We have a plant in Manta, Ecuador, and one in Barranquilla, Colombia. And then we have a trade office in Panama. So we are buying fish globally, which is why we handle 10% or so of the global tuna supply.
Yeah.
But it's people from literally all over.
What do you enjoy most about your job?
That's a tough question. I really like working with people on topics that are related to fishing. And I really like having variety. So the ability to work with fishermen on really social issues, and processing plants.
Yeah.
Probably my biggest accomplishment this year is I launched a grievance mechanism for Trimarine. So just over 5,000 employees in all of those locations.
Wow.
Like I say, offices, processing plants, and fishing vessels, which is a big combination of how do you provide coverage for all of those people.
Sounds like you're an expert.
It's exciting. I think that's exciting. So getting to work with people on that, getting to work with people on environmental through ISSF, getting to work on fisheries management issues. Again, just a different scope and setting of people. So came back earlier in December from the Cook Islands, where I was at the WCPFC meeting, and just got to see people from all around the Pacific and work on fisheries management, which is not on either of those two topics, but just really, I like that there's variety.
Yeah.
And I like that I am really helping support a lot of people in an industry that provides a very healthy, sustainable product.
Yeah. Yeah.
For eating.
You have a broad reach. It's just like, right here in Seaside.
I know.
Who knew? What do you like least about your job?
That's an even harder question. I really like my job. I really, really like what I do. I think maybe the most challenging thing, as opposed to the thing I like the least, would be that it is a lot of different time zones. So I have meetings at like 6 a.m. to deal with maybe the East Coast or Latin America or Europe. And then I will also end up taking calls at 7, 8, 9, occasionally 10 o'clock, so that I can meet with people in Asia.
Yeah.
And
that would be challenging.
And so that is challenging. And especially days when it's like, hey, I've got a 6 a.m. meeting that I'm leading. Yeah, right. And then, oh, wait, my last meeting. My last meeting is at 7 o'clock tonight. So that I think it's a lot of erratic hours. And the travel schedule can sometimes make it erratic for people that don't know me to schedule anything, because I'm here for 2 weeks and then I'm out for 2 weeks and then I'm home for a month. And then, very consistent in what I do. And once you're in my schedule, it's very easy to stay in it, but it can be really challenging to organize something new.
What would you tell someone who might be interested in following this career path?
I would advise to really think about what it is that you like doing. And get kind of a wide range of skills. I'm not necessarily going to say my career path, but I think any career path, and then I can get a little more specific. A lot of kids go to college and they'll say to me, Christa, what degree do you have? And I'm like, well, I have a degree in anthropology. And they're like, wait, what? You've got this great job and it's in fishing, and you're what? And I said, yeah, my advanced degree is in museology. It's the study of being a muse. And they're like, no, it isn't. And I'm like, no, seriously, it's actually in museum work and it's in fundraising and development. And I'm like, okay, neither of those have anything to do with commercial fishing. And I'm like, well, think about college as it's an opportunity to go and learn a lot about people and learn a lot about yourself and learn a lot about a lot of different topics. But your major is 40 hours.
Yeah.
And 40 hours, if you do 3 hours a week of credit in that, even if you do 5 of a work week is 40 hours, you're looking at 3 to 5 solid weeks in a workforce.
Yeah.
Focused. I'm not talking about getting coffee or checking your email or any of that, but 3 to 5 weeks of really focused effort. So when you graduate with a degree, in most fields, it isn't a specific of you've got to be having this particular credential. And there's a few exceptions, like teaching, you really do have to have your teaching credential, or being a doctor, you really need to be that.
Right.
But for a lot of occupations out there, having the degree is something people can't take away from you. It gives you, I could say, it's a different skill set. And it could be in a trade. It doesn't have to be college, certainly.
Right.
And then get experience. Get experience in as many things as you can. Be open to learning new things. I started out commercial fishing. I did sales and marketing. I wrote the first plan for sustainable MSC certified shrimp processing and tuna processing, which is, I didn't know it at the time. Right. I did it because I wanted the ability to sell sustainable products.
But writing the plan, your experience with marketing helps you understand doing those other skills,
It does. And then later, when it came time to apply for a sustainability job, even though my experience was in fleet management and my experience was in sales and my experience was in commercial fishing, I had that bit of sustainability experience where people said, oh, okay. And then now that I'm in sustainability, the experience I had in fleet management and the experience I had in working in plants and onboard fishing vessels allows me to do the job to the extent that I'm able to do it.
Right, because you learn to work with people and to understand processes of how things go. And
yeah, and so that's where, I don't think in the seafood industry in particular, there is no set career path. This is not one of those, you go in and you're going to work in a sales job and then you're going to do this and then you're going to do this other thing. Like I literally don't know one single person in the seafood industry that was like, yep, we're going to do.
That's what we're going to do.
This is what we're going to do. Now I know a lot of people like me who, hey, from the time I was like 5, there were 2 jobs I wanted. I wanted to commercial fish and I wanted to be a fleet manager. Guess what? I've done both of those because the skills that I was working on were going to get me to that particular role. And when the opportunity came, I jumped on it. But there isn't a school for fleet management.
Right.
So
school of life.
It is. And there are so many amazing people in the seafood industry, I think, because of that. It's
diverse.
It's diverse. And it is a place where people who really need a second chance have the ability to come in, right? I mean, if you don't have a perfectly clean background because you did something silly when you were 19 or 20 or maybe 35, I don't know. Maybe you're 50. Let's not put an age on it. But if you have something going on or you needed to change careers for some reason, if you're willing to put your time in and work hard and engage with others, the opportunity is there for you. Yeah. And I think that has led to more diversity really than anything in terms of who I've worked with, who I've had the opportunity to work with.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like fun. I mean, just the meeting all kinds of people. I love meeting all kinds of people who are just, finding out what they're doing and interacting and melding all your skills together. Yeah,
it's really fun. I mean, I have friends all over the world.
Yeah.
I've been all over the world. I think I've not been to 2 continents. I haven't been to Africa and I haven't been to Antarctica.
Well, you've got plenty of time.
I've got plenty of time, and I don't know if Antarctica has really much fishing. I know they do fishing offshore down there, but there's a pretty good chance I could probably get to Africa if I really put my mind to it with work. And I've been a lot of places and have enjoyed really everybody I've met who live very different lifestyles in a lot of ways, but at the same time, we're all ocean people.
Yeah.
And we all have kind of the same value set, which is really interesting to see that globally.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes it the world a smaller place than it.
It makes it a lot smaller.
Yeah. I can't even imagine not having ever gone to another country where you don't, I don't know, everybody needs to go to at least one other country. To see how other people live.
Yeah, it's definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, it is.
And it's fun to see it change. Mm-hmm. Meaning over time, it's really fun to see how different places integrate technology.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be interesting too. Yeah. Okay, well, thanks for joining us today. I don't know about you, but I thought that was really interesting. Adventure, other countries, new peoples and connections, helping the world out one ship at a time. I put links to Trimarine and International Sustainable Seafood Foundation in the show notes. Check it out if you'd like to know more information. I hope this week ahead is a great one. Hey, say, do you know someone who you think would be great for this show? Let me know. You can Hoping this week ahead is a great one. Say, do you know someone you think would be great for this show? Let me know. You can contact me from my website, jan-johnson.com. Until next time. If you enjoyed this or any other of my podcast episodes, it would be amazing if you would take a few minutes to leave a review so others can find it. Transcripts are available on my website at jan-johnson.com. Please join me again next week.